We're learning the second Sikha on Parsha Shmini in Chelek Chav Beis on page 47. The shir today is being learned Lil Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. The Sikha is also a hadran, a siyum on the entire Mishnayos, on Seder Taris and the entire Mishnayos. Related to this week's Parsha, where it discusses the subjects of Tum and Tara. The letzte Mesechte von the Shisha Sidre Mishnah, Mesechte Uktzin. The last Masechta of all of Shisha Sidr Mishnah, which is the Masechta of Uktzin, redt wegen die Prate Dinam von Tumas Eichlen ve Tumas Mashken, bestehen be Parsha Seino. It speaks about the details of Tumah impurity in relation to food and in relation to liquids, which is discussed in this week's Parsha. On the letzte halacha from the Masechta is, the very last halacha of the Masechta is as follows. Chalais devash, honeycombs, me'emesai mitamais mishumashke. At what point is the honey going to have a status of tumah, of impurity, as a liquid? So the honey that's in the comb, honey is one of the 7 liquids that has a unique status of tumah. It causes other things that become wet with honey or any of the 7 liquids to become susceptible to tumah. The honey that's inside the comb is not yet defined as a liquid of honey. It's inside the comb. But so now the question is, at what point does it become a liquid? B'shamay say Mishia Harer, when one has the idea, the plan to take out the honey. Leta zweite Gerse, or according to another version, Mishia Charcher, when one smokes the honeycomb to chase the bees away, and that is the beginning, the first process of taking out the honey. However, Beis say Mishia Rasik, only after he breaks open the honeycomb and he's actually taking out the honey from the comb, that's when it becomes a liquid and it has the status of tumah that relates to a liquid. So what's the explanation of their machlekes? Beis Shammai's opinion is, as gleich wie der Mensch is maharer b'machshavta, as soon as the person has the idea, lirdeis hadvash, to remove the honey from the honeycomb, akumtes adin mashke, it has the status of liquid, und es wird tomei betumas mashken. And the tumah that applies to liquids will be applicable. On the other hand, though Beis Hillel's opinion is this metame mishumashke erst mishirasik, it only will have the tumah of liquids only when you break it open and take out the honey. That's when the honey comes out and it becomes an actual liquid. Now, weiter, continuing on in the Mishnah Shalach in the next Mishnah, which is the letzte Mishnah from Shisha Sidr Mishnah, the very last Mishnah of all of Mishnayos. So it states as follows. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Osir HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahanchel l'chol tzadik v'tzadik shleish meyos v'asara olamis. Hashem will make every single tzadik inherit 310 worlds. Shenemar, as it says, lahanchel oya ve'yesh. Hashem will make the ones that love him inherit yesh, and yesh is the numerical value of 310. V'yitzreiseyem amale, and their storehouses or their treasuries will be filled. Further, the Mishnah says another statement: Amar Rav Shimon ben Chalafta leimotza Hakadosh Baruch Hu keli machzik bracha liYisrael elo hashalom. Hashem has not found a vessel that will contain peace for Yidden, or again a vessel that will contain blessing for Yidden. Elo hashalom, only peace. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Hashem oiz la'am yitein. Hashem gives strength to Yidden. Hashem yivarech esamoi, and Hashem blesses Yidden. How? Bashalom, through peace. And this is the conclusion of all of Shisha Sidr Mishnah. Darf man verstehen. So the question here is, was ist the Sheiches von der letzte Mishnah, die Maimorim von Rabbi Shua ben Levi und Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, zu der Mishnah Shalufneze, die plukte zwischen Beshami and Besil ben Negeh Chalas Dvash? What's the connection of the last Mishnah that discusses general ideas regarding the schar of a Yid in this world, regarding the keli for bracha, to the argument that's brought before regarding the honey, at what point it has the status of a mashke that Beis Shammai and Beis argue about? So the Rambam und noch Mefarshim, the Rambam and other commentaries and a Mevayir explain as follows: Lefi shehishlim kol dinei halacha. Now, when we come to the end of Mishnayos and we've completed learning all of the halachas, chasam advarim b'gmul. So the Tana completes the Mishnayos talking about the reward for fulfilling all the halachas. Das says the Mishnah hat takenit kein hemshich beteichen to the Mishnah shlofana. In other words, this Mishnah really has no connection in its content to what was discussed earlier here. nor this is a siyum of ganz Shisha Sidra Mishnah. Rather, this is just a conclusion for all of the halachas of Shisha Sidra Mishnah, b'chtei lo hidia b'chsimis ha-Mishnah, in order to notify us in the conclusion of the Mishnayis, matan schar shel tzadikim, the reward of the tzadikim, shaloimdim u'mekaimim kol ma shekasav b'Mishnah, that learn and fulfill everything that's written in all of the Mishnayis. However, the Rebbe says like this: Lo yitav b'megefint in the Gemara b'kamim b'kaimis. According to what we find in Gemara in many places, as man is mevayed dem tam asmichis from Mishnayis, the Gemara explains the connection of one Mishnah and another. Even when the two Mishnayis are in two different Mesechtes. Definitely, there is times where the Gemara will explain the connection that there is from one Mishnah to another in the same Perek. So it would seem that here as well, there is place to look and to try to find a connection that there is between these two Mishnayos. The reason the Rambam says, of course, remains, that it's just to tell us about the reward for keeping all of the Mishnayos. But to sweeten, to give a better explanation, that we could find a connection between the Mishnayos here, so that we can look further here. So we can say that the content of this Mishnah, that's right before the last Mishnah that discusses the reward of mitzvahs, the argument between Beishamai and Fishel regarding the Chalis Dvash, hat a shayches zu dem Inyan schar mitzvah was retzich b'siyum ha-Mishnayis. It does have a specific connection to this Mishnah about Chalis Dvash, and therefore, yes, it's talking about the schar of mitzvahs, but it comes following what it said before in the argument of Beishamai and Fishel regarding Chalis Dvash. Or behegdim, to explain this, we first need to have the following introduction, ha-hasbara in divrei ha-mefarshim anal. Let's first understand better what the Rambam and the Mefarshim say as the siyum from Shisha Sidra Mishnah b'Maimarim Anal is b'chteit zu midiyah zayin inyan matan scharen shel tzadikim. That the Tana concludes with this concept about the reward of tzadikim to let us know, after you finish the Mishnah, is the reward of learning and fulfilling all of these Mishnahs. The Lechaire is nicht verstandig, so seemingly this is not understood. Da redt sich doch wegen tzadikim. We're speaking here about people that are on the level of tzadikim. Und wir sie halten schon beim Siyum von Shisha Sidra Mishnah. They're on the level where they learned and are concluding all of the Mishnayos. Shleimus b'limudat Torah. They came to a point of ultimate level of learning all of Torah. Klalis HaTorah Shebal Peh. This includes all of Torah Shebal Peh. Und the Yatzadik learned this. On the level of the way Yatzadik learns Torah Shebal Peh. It's the L'chayre Pashut to move on, if though it should be obvious and understood, as sie halten schon gewiss bei dem Eufen HaAvede litten Sivya Mishnah noch beseide Nezik, and they're definitely on the level of what was mentioned already earlier in a Mishnah, which comes much before in Seide Nezikin, where it says in Pirkei Yavis, Mishamshin Esarav Shaloi Almanas Lekabel Pras Nitzalib Schar. They serve Hashem not with an expectation to get a reward, nor Lishma. They serve Hashem for the sake of what Hashem wants, for the sake of the mitzvah itself. If so, why, by concluding all of the Mishnayos, are we bringing the reward that a tzaddik gets for learning and fulfilling all the Mishnayos? This question, and yet another question on this, der Pasuk was wird gebracht in the Mishnah Gufa. The Pasuk that's quoted here in this Mishnah itself, tells us, Lahanchil oya veyesh, that the ones that love Hashem inherit, yesh, they inherit the 310 worlds. Which means divas dina de ma'ibishtin me'ava. We're speaking about people that are on the level that are serving Hashem purely out of love for Hashem. Was das meint, wie der Rambam is mevayer barucha. This means, as the Rambam explains at length in Hilchas Shuvah, as a tuin ze raveda lishma. This refers to those that serve Hashem for the sake of what Hashem wants. Nit l'shem schar, not having in mind any reward, nor oisa ha'emes mepnei shahu emes. Doing the truth for the sake of truth itself. That's the ava that this pasuk talks about. Now, the Rebbe clarifies, emes takeh, as there was as oisa emes mepnei shahu emes, the one that serves Hashem for the truth, for the sake of truth, is muftach with the Rambam Zogdar, so he is guaranteed, as the Rambam says, asoif hatova love beglala. Then in the end, all goodness will come to him for this kind of level of serving Hashem. So he will, that doesn't mean that any schar will be prevented from him. He'll get the greatest schar in the world. Aber nicht das ist die Schleimus, zu welcher strebt, zu der Gleiche mit seiner Aveda. However, it's not this reward though that this person is interested in or is striving for to reach through his serving Hashem. By an Eved Hashem Meyave, by the one that serves with love, is that inyan, from Seif HaTeva, love B'Glola, the fact that in the end, because of his work, he gets the schar, not a davet tafel at study. This is secondary and a side point. Und der Ikke bei ihm, what's the primary focus is was hat zeiche gewend zu dienen dem Eibischen Lishma. Is the Aveda itself, that he's on the level that he's serving Hashem for the sake of what Hashem wants from him. That's his focus. So the question here is, and wie bald does the Ikke v'tachlis and Aveda Sateiru mitzvahs is Lishma? Und nit lekabel schar. If the whole purpose and the main focus of a person's Aveda is to serve Hashem for the sake of the mitzvah and not to receive any reward, wie is masim? How is it then fitting here? As beim Siyum von alle Shisha Sidra Mishnah, at the conclusion of all of the Shisha Sidra Mishnah, was das meint in a matzah from Tachlis or Shleimus Naila B'Avedas Hashem Chulu. A person comes to the ultimate highest level of completion in serving Hashem. So what's the closing Mishnah of all of Shisha Sidra Mishnah? Nit as Nafshay Kshura Ba'Avedas Hashem Chulu. Not expressing this itself, that the person yearns just for one thing, that he is to be connected to Hashem with love. Nor was vet haben shai elam ischulu. Rather the fact that he will now benefit and have 310 worlds as a reward. Als gemol uschar for avedis atayro mitzvahs. As a reward for his fulfilling and serving Hashem in Torah mitzvahs. So this seems to be very difficult to understand. Muzmen sagen, so what we must say here is as follows. As die Sach von der Hanchachol Shai Elimis, this that it says in the Mishnah that the tzaddikim inherit 310 worlds, was retzich in the Mishnah da, that the Mishnah speaks of, is nicht an inyan von schar mitzvahs b'muvoni yaragol. This is not addressing a concept of reward for mitzvahs in the usual sense. A tashlum von Elimis far avedis Hashem. A certain pay, a certain reward of worlds for the one that serves Hashem. Nor das is a hechere shleimus ba'aveda. Rather, the Mishnah here is discussing another step in the ultimate completion of the aveda itself, of the serving Hashem itself. An aliyah, when a person gets elevated to yet another level, that at a certain level, a higher level, that the person reaches through the actual aveda itself. So this is sort of the completion and the ultimate place a person comes through the very aveda itself. That's what this Mishnah is discussing. At the conclusion of Mishnayos, the closing Mishnah is the point of how high and the ultimate level of connection to Hashem a person reaches through the very Aveda itself. That's the way we have to approach and understand this Mishnah, and the Rebbe will explain soon in detail what the Mishnah is saying here. But first, in Sif Gimel, the Rebbe will explain now, give us the outline of the connection of the Mishnah of the machlokes about Chalas Devash between Shammai and Hillel, and the connection here to this subject of the ultimate level in Aveda that a person comes to, that's described in the last Mishnah of Mishnayos. Und das ist die Nekudas HaShayches zwischen dem Mishnah mit dem Mishnah Shelefanel, Pluktes B'Shammai B'Hillel B'Chalas Devash. This is the point of the connection of the Mishnah that discusses here the ultimate shleimus in a person's Aveda, and the argument between Shammai and Hillel regarding the honey in the honeycomb. From one of the reasons, as a hint, was die letzte halachas on Mishnah, in Mishnah, Chitum Mishnah, the last halachas of the Mishnah, the closing of Mishnayos, Shakel Heilach Achar Chitum, everything follows the last and the closing of the Mishnayos. Zene Benegeh Dveirim und Dvash is discussing the bees and the honey in the honeycomb. Is Val Dveirim Zene Kibir Chazal. Meram is of Shleimus Aveda. It's because it's the bees, the ones that produce the honey. As Chazal themselves say, they hint to the ultimate level of serving Hashem. Avodah Lishma, the ones that serve just for the sake of Hashem Himself, Kedul Kamon Siv Zayin, as will be quoted later and explained in Siv Zayin. Was the Avodah, this kind of serving Hashem, this level, is a Hachana V'Agdama. This is the preparation, and what that brings one to Oster the Kadosh Baruch Hu Lahanchal Chol Tzadik Cholu, to come to the ultimate level where you have the inheritance from Hashem. The shleimos to Valachem and the Greicht al Yedei Aveda via Avedas Dvarim. The ultimate level that you come in your Avedas Hashem when you serve Hashem, similar to the nature of the way bees do their work. as will be explained. That's one point. Further, on the svaris and pluktas Beishamai u'Beis Hillel, and now the basis, the background in the argument between Beishamai and Beis Hillel in Otter plukta b'chalas dvash, regarding this argument here, regarding the honey in the honeycombs, and the Rabbi here brings in short the point of what this explanation is based on. Was is vigeret kama pamim. So this was already explained a number of times. Verbunden mit dem Chiluk klali zwischen zeire shittas. This is based on a general difference in the approach between Beishamai and Beis Hillel. Tzias lina and basa b'koyach. When you come to define something, when you come to establish a certain status about something, do you follow the way it is in its potential state? Or do you look at the way it is in its actual state? That is what defines it. What's the main thing you focus on? Beishamai say that you focus on what it is in its potential state. So here in our case regarding the honey and the honeycomb, the honey will have a status of a liquid as soon as the person smokes the honeycomb to get the bees away, or even earlier, when the person is already planning, he made that decision and he's planning to take out the honey, even before there's any honey available. Is a shem mashke, because potentially, according to his decision and plan, or even maybe some action, it's already a liquid. Is noch weit from mashke b'poil. Even though it's far from being actual liquid, it's still inside the comb. That's Beishamai's approach. That's how you define this as a liquid. On Beis Hillel halt, on the other hand, it's Beis Hillel's approach as linon basa b'poil. We define a status of something by what it is in actuality. On the Rebbe, hat es nicht kein din mashke. The honey here does not have a din that can't be defined as a liquid. Bis es wird mashke b'poil mishir rasik. Only when it becomes actual liquid, when you break open the honeycomb. That's the general point here of the explanation between Beishamai and Beis Hillel. So this idea, this concept, the two approaches of whether you define something by its potential state or its actual state, is something which expresses a relevant point in the regarding the entire purpose of creation of man and the world here. That's created in the world to serve Hashem. As will be explained in the Sikha Sivches going forward, what is the relevance of the two approaches of Beishamai and Beis Hillel, B'koyach and B'poil, that's expressed in this Mishnah, that becomes relevant to the shleimus of a person's Aveda, that's explained in the last Mishnah of Mishnayos. Ubemele, and then as an outcome, this is also relevant regarding the ultimate level that one comes to through his Aveda, discussed in the last Mishnah. Only after the Mishnah quotes this machlokes between Beishamai and Beis Hillel regarding the honeycombs, this gives you a better understanding of what the Tana is saying in the last Mishnah when he says that Hashem will make the tzaddikim inherit the 310 worlds. This is the outline of the explanation of the connection of these two Mishnayos. Now the Rabbi will begin to explain in detail what these Mishnayos are saying, and the Rabbi begins first with the last Mishnah of Oster HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lahanchel. Lashon HaMishnah, velech is lashon ktsara ubetachlis adik. The language of the Mishnah, which is very concise and very precise. So it says, Oster HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lahanchel cholu shayelemis, that Hashem will make inherit all the tzaddikim, the 310 worlds. Is l'chayre, the question on this is, vi pasto lahanchel. How does this expression of lahanchel, which is an inheritance, fit in over here? Anin yishol Yerusha, concept of inheritance. Yerusha is nit verbunden mit der Avodah von dem Yerish. Inheritance is not at all caused by or related to any work or any achievement of the one that inherits. Oib nor is geboren geworden bekurve von a Yerish, if he's just born as a relative, therefore he's in a position to inherit, is bederach memele Yerish. He will inherit whether he's achieved it or not. And velach es retzech, now over here, is this Mishnah is when es retzech wegen matnes chornish tzadikim. So now, in this Mishnah where it's discussing the reward that tzadikim receive for the avodah that they do, had gedav shein, Oster HaKadosh Baruch Hu litin. What the Mishnah should say is that Hashem will give or some similar language to say that we're speaking over here about an achievement through the Aveda of what Hashem will give, and as a result of this achievement. What's the meaning of the word lahanchel? The Tmiyah is noch grasser. The question on this expression is even greater. The selbe Maime werd gebracht in Masechta Sanhedrin. The very same statement that it says here in the Mishnah is quoted also in Masechta Sanhedrin, and there it's an Ameira that says this. Und dort steht Take, and there it says different. It says, Oster the Kadosh Baruch Hu litein l'chol tzadik v'tzadik shai olamis. That in the future Hashem will give every single tzaddik the 310 worlds. So there must be something that's b'diuk here, that's with an intention, that in the Mishnah it says the word lahanchel, that we're speaking here about an inheritance. The explanation here is that this is exactly the entire point. The lahanchel is the key of the understanding of what this Mishnah is talking about. The statement in Masechta Sanhedrin, which was said by an Ameira by the name of Rava bar Mori, there he's speaking about the simple idea of reward for mitzvahs. And therefore he says the expression that Hashem will give. However, in the Mishnah, here in the Mishnah, where this is the end and the closing of all Mishnayos, it's not speaking about the concept of reward of mitzvahs on a simple and basic level. Nor kanal, but rather as explained before. It's speaking about the ultimate level that the tzaddik reaches in his Aveda, serving Hashem l'shma, totally with love. On the Ribber is Rabbi Shua ben Levi. So therefore Rabbi Shua ben Levi, which was a Tana, Medayek, so he's very precise in saying, Oster the Kadosh Baruch Hu lahanchel, that Hashem will bring the inheritance. Ot the shleimus is bedugmas or begidre Yerusha. Because this level, the shleimus, the ultimate connection and level that a person comes to through his very Aveda itself, is expressed by the concept of inheritance. What's unique about the concept of inheritance? So here the Rebbe quotes and explains Al Pinigla, how does inheritance work? B'negaya Yerusha, regarding inheritance, is Yudua, was the Rogatchover is Mevayer. It's well known what the Rogatchover explained. As a Yerush is nit that zweite Metzies, was bekommt nechasim von der Meirish. The way Yerusha works is, it's not two entities. There's the Meirish, the bequeather, and then the Yerush, the inheritor. And the money, or the possessions, the assets, are changing possessions from one to another. It's going from the Meirish, the bequeather, to the Yerush, to the inheritor. That's not how it works. That's not the definition of this. Nor rather, B'lashon HaKosev, to use the expression the Pasuk itself says, Tachas avisecha yiu benecha. In the place of your father is the children. Which means the Yerush stayed b'makim ha-Meirish. The Yerush simply takes the place of the Meirish. A Yerush is ein Zach mitten Meirish. The Yerush is one with his father, the Meirish, or etzem ha'av. He is the essence of the father, b'lashoine, to use the exact expression that the Rogatchover himself says. And therefore what this means is that the possessions remain where they are. But when there's Yerusha, the son is in the place of the father. And therefore he has the possessions automatically being in his place. That's how Yerusha works. So now we could apply this here regarding the schar that this Mishnah speaks about on a whole different level of schar. While derech zeh is benegeit zu Yidden. Similar could be applied regarding the Aveda of Yidden and the connection of Yidden to the Eibishter. The Shleimus, was wird aufgetan, der mitvas a Yid lernen Teiren is Mekayim mitzvahs. What is the ultimate level that's accomplished by a Yid by learning Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs? Is was Yisrael ayraise v'kutshubirichu kol echad. It's the fact that when you learn Torah and you do mitzvahs, it ultimately reveals how the Yidden and the Torah and Hashem are all one. Gimel, to quote the expression of the Zoya, that there are three that are miskashron da b'da, three that are tied and that there's a bond that are connected one to another. Kutshubirichu ayraise v'Yisrael, the Eibishter, the Torah and the Yidden, and Vert Kulachad, they all become completely one through learning Torah. And similar also is accomplished when a Yid fulfills mitzvahs. One of the interpretations of the word mitzvahs itself means connection, to become one. A Yid vert kavayachol ein zach mit neisen ha-Torah o mitzvah mitzvahs. A Yid Kaviyachol becomes completely one with Hashem, the giver of the Torah and the commander of the mitzvahs. He becomes one with Hashem himself. That is the ultimate level of Aveda. Not that a Yid is an entity, a creation that listens and accepts and receives and fulfills, but rather he comes to the point where he becomes so unified with the commander and the giver of the Torah itself that it's one, it's Chad. That's the concept of Yerusha that's applied in Aveda. Und das ist the Pshat von Lahanchel Oyave Yesh. This is the meaning of what the Mishnah says, that there'll be an inheritance to the ones that love Hashem, and this inheritance in the Pasuk says Yesh. What does the word Yesh mean? The Rambam is Mevaya. The Rambam here explains, as the Loshen Yesh, the term Yesh, which means something that is here and exists. What kind of existence is this? Vaystoif Metzias Hatmidis Asher Ein Lo Tachlis. A real and constant entity that exists, that has no other end, no other purpose. It is the ultimate existence. On the Halchel Oyave Yesh meint, and when the Mishnah says that this is the inheritance of the ones that love Hashem, that they will inherit Yesh, means Lo Oyavai, to the ones that love me, Anchel Es Hayesh Hamuchlet. They inherit the absolute existence of Hashem, that they become completely one. Val Kol Nefesh Shetiske L'chai Olam Haba. Every soul coming to its ultimate purpose and will merit the life of Olam Haba L'tichle L'olam, lives on forever, and it becomes one with the ultimate true existence of Hashem. That's the concept of Lahanchel Oyave Yesh that is expressed in the concept of Yerusha. Now the question is, Vi ken anivre abal gvul? How could a created being, a limited being, nemin, handle and take ayesh hamuchlet, to be one, to be connected to the very essence and truth of existence, ametzias satmidis, the true and constant existence of Hashem, an inyan von nitzchias bilti bal gvul, an entity of eternity and unlimitedness. A creation, a human being limited, has no way to handle this. Is the pasuk mevayiru madgish? So to this, the pasuk explains and emphasizes lahanchel oyave yesh, that this is in a manner of an inheritance. What does this mean? Yidden bakumen es nit als am bekabel von anoisen. The Yidden who cannot receive and do not receive this level of connection to the true existence of Hashem Himself as a recipient that's receiving from one that gives, in other words, two separate entities. A zweite Metzias, another entity, welche nimmt es von dem Neisen, that's receiving and taking something from a giver. The moment you say it's two separate entities, then a Yid has no way to connect and receive on this level, to be connected to the Yesh HaMuchlet, to the ultimate essence of Hashem. No, rather, Yidden sind das Neuchel als Jörisch. The Yidden inherit this as an inheritor. Was ist ein Sach mit dem Meirish? When you reveal the true essence of who the Yid is, when he's not in a existence of a creation, rather the essence of who the Yid is, where he's one with Hashem Himself. Yidden sind am Banam LaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is because the Yidden are the children of Hashem, as it is with the Yeirish and the Meirish, where the child is the Etzem Ha'av, he's the essence of the father. Und the Rebbe, and therefore, b'shas a Yid learning Torah is Mekayim mitzvahs, when a Yid fulfills Torah, or learns Torah, that is, and then fulfills the mitzvahs. Vert is Gale, what this ultimately reveals in the Yid is, wie is ein Metzias mit an Emerson Yesh HaMuchlet Metzias Atmidis. It ultimately reveals how his entity is one and the same together, one completely with the true existence of Hashem, the constant existence, or in the expression that the Medrash says, Oisi atom loichem. When you learn Torah, it's not just the level of Chochmah in Torah, or whatever concept there is in the fulfillment of a mitzvah, but it's the very essence of Hashem Himself that's there, that reveals in the Yid his true existence, which is completely one with the essence of Hashem. That's the level that this Mishnah is discussing when it says Lahanchel Oyave Yesh, the ultimate level that a Yid comes to in his Avedis Hashem. Here though, the Rebbe continues and explains how this is related to what the Mishnah then goes on to say here. I mean, this is the Lahanchel Oyave Yesh is the expression that it says in the Pasuk. But the Mishnah learns from this that the tzaddik receives the reward of 310 olamas. How is this related to these 310 olamas that the tzaddik receives? Now, the fun is verstandig, benegeye dem oineg, was kommt der fun heraus la tzaddikim. From this we could also understand regarding the pleasure of the reward that's here that the tzaddikim get. Because this is the Pirish and Divrei Rabbi Shua ben Levi. This is simply what Rabbi Shua ben Levi is speaking about when he says, Oster that Kadosh Baruch Hu lahanchel l'chol tzaddik v'tzaddik shai olamas. That every tzaddik will have 310 worlds. What's the point of these 310 worlds? Wie der Rambam is mevayer, as the Rambam explains, as das meint, as der Tainuk von Olam Haba. What it's saying here is that the pleasure that the tzaddik gets in Olam Haba is shloish meyes pam ve'esa pamim v'kol hatanugas Olam Hazeh. It's 310 times more than all of the pleasures that there are in this world. So the point that the Mishnah here is saying is the pleasure that a tzaddik has in coming to this level. What is this pleasure all about? So based on what we said before, this seems to sort of contradict the whole point of the fact that the tzaddik is not looking for any pleasure, not looking for any reward. We're talking over here about being one with the Yesha Muchlit, where the person becomes just completely one with Hashem. So the Rebbe explains to us what level of pleasure are we talking about here. Das ist nicht der Einig von die Tzaddikim, wie sie sind für sich. We're not talking over here about the level of the pleasure for a tzaddik as he experiences this as an entity for himself. B'lashon Chassidus, to use the expression that it says in Chassidus, the nachas ruach lenivra, the pleasure and the satisfaction that there is that the created being receives, which would be the nachas ruach was vert beim Yidden, the pleasure that a Yid has als schar, as a reward, was hat mekayim gewend dem Eibishens Ratzen, as a reward for the fact that he's able to fulfill Hashem's will. That's not the schar we're talking about. That's not the einig, the pleasure we're talking about. No, das ist der Teinig von Eibishten Kavayachol. Nachas ruach lebeire. We're talking about Hashem's pleasure in the fulfillment of the mitzvah. K'mayim Chazal, nachas ruach lefonai, shamarti v'naser etzaini. As Chazal tell us that Hashem has pleasure and nachas ruach when a Yid fulfills the mitzvah. And it's that schar, rather, that einig that the Yid feels, that the Yid will experience. V'bal, the Yidden sind in ein Zach mit dem Meirish, since Yidden are completely one with Hashem, with the Meirish, then is a neichel kaviyachol dem tainig abeire. So the Yidden inherit, so to speak, they experience the very same einig, the pleasure of Hashem. His pleasure that he has, that is what a Yid experiences when he becomes completely one with Hashem. That's the Shai Elamis that this Mishnah is talking about. Now, the Rebbe clarifies here, you may think the number Shai Elamis, that's what expresses this idea. Und wie der Rambam ist gleich mevayer, the Rambam himself clarifies and says, as das was Rabbi Shub and Levi nutzt am Mispar von shloish meis v'asara, the fact that he says that this eineg is 310 times more than the tainig that there is in this world is al derech ha'orah bilvad. This is just merely a commentary to give us some kind of idea of how much greater this pleasure is than what there is in this world. Aber lefia emes, truthfully speaking, is the satainig bilti mudbal. This is a completely different level of pleasure, the unlimited pleasure of Hashem, which the person experiences when he's one with Hashem. This is the difference between the regular concept of schar, which is also expressed in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, where it says, and what this Mishnah here is saying is, when it speaks about the inheritance to the ones that love Hashem, and they inherit the yesh, this oneness with Hashem. The Tainig was kommt on zum Adam als schar, the pleasure that the one that serves Hashem receives as a reward for serving Hashem, was Kabbalah schar. When you speak about receiving reward, weist as the Mekabel Aschar is a Metzias for sich. What that indicates is that the one receiving this reward is an entity that's serving. That has to be paid for, has to be compensated for his work. Is there tainug vifal an adam als nivra ken vernehmen? So since we're speaking about a person that exists and functions and experiences himself as a created being, so that's the level of schar that he's able to handle in that reality. By contrast, though, when this Mishnah here says that Hashem will give the inheritance for all those that love Him, this level of yesh is der nachas ruach lebeire. Here, what it's speaking about is Hashem's pleasure, an inyan von yesha muchlit, the true existence of Hashem, the pleasure on His level. Was das ist nicht der inyan von schar mitzvah. This is not the typical idea of reward, nor this is the etzem ha-mitzvah. It's the very essence of the mitzvah itself, which is the pleasure of Hashem, the will of Hashem. That itself is what's now revealed to the one that fulfills it. Und das kommt dann zum Adam b'derech nachla. And this will be experienced and reached a person not by means of another entity that could handle and receive this, but as an inheritance, which means, as it is with Yerusha, he's in the place of the Meirish, he becomes completely one with Hashem himself. That's the idea here that the Mishnah speaks about. We understand now what Lahanchel is. what the term yesh means, and what the shai elamis, the einig, the pleasure of the shai elamis in the Mishnah is talking about. Now the Rebbe will explain also what the term of oyave, the emphasis on the oyave is, and this will lead us into explaining the connection to the Mishnah that discusses the honeycombs, which is produced by the hard work of the bees. Das is the tam havas de lahanchel yesh is la'oyavai dafke. This will explain why this inheritance of yesh, of the essence of Hashem himself, is to the ones that love Hashem. What does the love over here mean? As the Rebbe quoted before, the Rambam says, Oyavai over here means the ones that serve Hashem completely for the sake of Hashem. They love Him and they serve for the sake of Hashem, not having themselves in mind at all. So the point here is like this. When can a person reach to this level that he inherits the yesh, to be one completely with Hashem? That's also when the approach and the style of the way he's serving Hashem is also with this attitude. As a trachtet wegen sich. He does not have himself in mind at all. It's completely and thoroughly for the sake of Hashem, for an Eibish's wegen. That's the Aveda of Oyavai. Kolzman, der Odem tracht wegen an Inishal. As long as the person has his mind on some kind of reward, oder wegen sich bechlal, sein aliyah, or any idea of growth or elevation, even on the spiritual sense, that he wants to get closer and higher, is nit shaykh as soll werden ein Sach mit yesh hamuchlet und mit zies atmidis, was es in ganzen Heche von Gedan Ephraim. It's impossible to, on one hand, base your Aveda on your entity of who you are and what your desire is, and at the same time to be completely one with the true and essence of existence and the existence of Hashem, which is the constant and real existence, which is beyond the definitions and the boundaries of an entity that exists as a created being. Dafke, wenn sein Aveda is in ganzen Lishma. Specifically and only when a person serves Hashem totally forgetting of himself, totally for the sake of Hashem. Is nit kemitzias for sich. He's not an entity for himself. Tracht nor wegen dem etzem ha-mitzvah. All he's thinking about the mitzvah itself. Was the fond wert and nachas ruach lefonai, shamarti v'naser etzeni. In the mitzvah you have the pleasure of Hashem that's here, the will of Hashem that's expressed in it. Then it's this kind of Aveda where you're connected to the Eibishter himself, and then as a result, you inherit and you become one with the Eibishter himself. This concept is also found in halacha simply regarding the relationship that there is between a servant and his master. As an emes eved, the true definition of a servant, eved al pi Torah semis, the way the Torah of truth defines this, is nit kemitzias for sich. He's not an entity for himself that serves his master. Sein ganze mitzias. What does his entire entity consist of? Is mitzias adam. He's an extension of the master. His entire entity is just a fulfillment of whatever the master's will is. And therefore whatever the Eved owns is owned by the master. Not by him owning it first and then from his possession it is given over to the master. Whatever he owns is the master's because he is just an extension of a fulfillment of what the master wants. And this is the way a Yid does his Aveda. That's what brings this kind of unity to be completely one with Hashem. Lahanchel oyave yesh. This is the connection to the theme of the honey that's produced by the hard work of the bees that fly around and bring the from the flowers. They create the honey. So the bees work very hard. And what is the style? What is the approach? What's the attitude of the bees? Und das ist eigentlich der Remes in dem, was die Mishnai Shalufneze reden wegen Kaveres de Voirem und Chales de Vash. This is the connection of the Mishnahs before that speak about the honeycombs that are created by the bees and the Chales de Vash, the honeycombs themselves. Well, the Aveda von Yidden in dem Eufen von Lishma, because serving Hashem on this level, totally for the sake of Hashem, is angedatet in dem, was Yidden sind zugeglichen geworden zu Dvoirem. This is expressed by the fact that in the Medrash, it compares Yidden serving Hashem to the bees. Wie steht in Medrash, as the Medrash tells us. Kedvairim hayu banai. My children, the Yidden, are like the bees. What's the big level of the hard work of the bees here? Ma hadvaira is just like the bee. Kol ma shehi misageles lebalel. Everything that the bees gather They gather all to produce the honey for the one that owns it. As it is with the bees, you have the queen bee that's in the nest or in the honeycomb, and then you have the worker bees that go out and work to be able to create and produce the honey. So these worker bees are doing it all for the sake of Baaleh, for the queen bee, not at all for itself. Kach, so too, kol mashi Yisrael, misaglin, mitzvahs, ma'asim tovim, everything that Yidden do when they gather and they fulfill mitzvahs and good deeds, it's all being done just for the sake of their Father in heaven, without having themselves in mind, their own benefit altogether. That's what's hinted in the concept of the honey that's produced by these bees. This is discussed and explained by the Alter Rebbe and Likutei Torah as the Aveda b'ofen zeh, that when one serves Hashem in this manner, kommt von der Hakara. This is a result of the recognition the person has as tachlis hamachuvim bebrias ha'adam, the ultimate purpose of creation of man, is not just for the person, for the sake and for the benefit of the person alone. Af shebe'emes aliyasai nefla ma'od. Even though the truth is that by serving Hashem here in this world, a person will experience a tremendous and great elevation. But nevertheless, this alone is not the purpose, the elevation that the person experiences. Rather, it's for the sake of Hashem's honor. That's the approach that a person has to have, and that's what a person is focused on. And as expressed in the short statement that Chazal tell us, I have been created just to serve my master, not for the benefit of any maila, any level that a person comes to through his Aveda here in this world. So this inyan of Lahanchel Oyev is connected to the previous Mishnah discussing the honey produced by the bees, their approach and their Aveda, doing it completely selflessly for Baaleh, for the one that they're working for. And now here, going forward, Sifches, as the Rabbi said before, we will explain here the specific connection of the two approaches, Beishamai and Beisilul, which is based on the two svaras of whether you follow B'koyach, whether the potential state of something is defines what it is, or the actual state of it is what defines it. Now, we can now understand the connection of the two approaches, the argument between Beishamai and Beisilul regarding the honeycomb, with the following introduction. And this is all going to be based on the Likutei Torah, the expression, the lashon that it says there. In the lashon now from Likutei Torah is mudgish. In the language that Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah, it's emphasized as lepoyol kumt zu the adam durch sein aveda lemata zu an aliyah nefla ma'od. That when a yid serves Hashem here in this world, so in actuality he does reach to a great height, to a great level that he comes to, a nifla, very unbelievable great height through his aveda in this world. This is not, it's just that the Alter Rebbe clarifies, as loizu levad hu tachlis hamachuvin. It's not this itself, just this alone is not the ultimate purpose. But in fact, the person, though, in his Aved in this world, does come to a very great aliyah. And in them, though, achiluk zwischen shittas Beishamai. So it's in this point here, the aliyah that the person comes to. Here is the difference between the opinion of Beishamai, was halten, as lina basa b'kayach, and their opinion is that we follow the potential state of what it is. On shittas Beisilul as lina basa b'payil, that we follow the actual state of it. Tif der inyan, the aliyah is teifis mokim. To what degree, to what level is this aliyah, this level that a person reaches, the elevation that he comes to through his aveda in this world, to what extent is this significant? To what extent is this important to itself? And the difference is as follows. If we follow, when we define things only with the approach, looking at the way things are from their potential standpoint, as the ikke von jeder is wie steht bekoyach kommt eis, then it comes out as the yiridus haneshama lamata der bepoil, the fact that the neshama actually descends in this world and it does its aveda in this world, tut nit oif kein meile chadosha in der neshama legabe wie sie is given koiden miridasa. It doesn't accomplish something that's completely brand new and novel in relation to who and what the neshama is before it descends into this world. Because the primary, the source and the power, the potential that there is for this aliyah that the neshama has, Der koyach auf durchführen die Aveda lamata, the potential and the power that it has to do its Aveda here in this world and to come to these great heights is shen da in the neshama noch ede sie is yered lamata. It exists already within the power of the soul itself, even before it comes into this world. The soul itself has this unlimited power that wherever you'll put it through the greatest challenges here in this world, it'll work and it'll survive and it'll thrive and it'll serve Hashem. So it's the potential of the neshama that's already there from before. Noch mehr, furthermore, benitten die dann in our case, darf man afüllen nicht haben, dem Peil als abchine auf den Koyach HaNeshama zu durchführen ihrer Aveda lamata. In our case, the implementation to allow for the potential to be actualized is not needed to prove and to express that potential which is there before. According to Beishamai, usually the whole value of the pile, of the actual, is just the fact that it proves sort of and expresses the potential that's there before. But in this case, the pile doesn't have to prove it and doesn't add anything to the potential that's there before. Because it's a definite thing. As sof at yede neshama durchführen ihre shlichus ba'al medain. Every neshama coming into this world will fulfill its purpose in this world. As the pasuk promises, vilti yidach mimenu nidach. There won't be one neshama which will be rejected and not have the ability to fulfill its purpose in this world. And furthermore, another point which is also important, Hashem that sees the future, sees regarding every individual that he in the future will fulfill his shlichus in this world. So from Hashem's perspective, the bekoyach, what's there in potential, is complete. It's totally b'shleimus. There's nothing new that's added over here when the neshama actualizes that in this world. If so, it comes out as like Beishamai, according to Beishamai's approach, is nitok kin art zu sagen. There's no room to say as the aliyah and the flaw from the Namadam that the great and unbelievable elevation the neshama experiences in the world is an oiftu v'chidish, is an accomplishment and is something novel. What's to leave them darv zayin yiridas haneshama lamata b'payil. That for this the neshama must actually descend here in this world. That can't justify and explain what the neshama is here in the world for. Und das, was the neshama is yored lamata, the fact that the neshama does descend here below in this world, is legamri nit to leave them ilay v'zvert evgetan in the neshama. It's completely not for the sake of expressing the power of what the neshama has in it. Nor blois l'sagel lebaleha. It's here in this world completely just for the sake of Hashem, the owner of the neshama, so to speak, that brings him into the world. Which is kedei zu durchführen the kavana von Eibishten. In order for the neshama to fulfill Hashem's purpose, was nesava kadosh baruch hu liyis loy dire b'tachtainu. Hashem's desire is to have a dwelling here in this low world, and that could only be accomplished when the neshama is actually here in this world, as the Rabbi explains. For this to be accomplished is nit genug was the neshama hat bekoyach zu machen de dire. It's not sufficient the fact that the neshama potentially could create this dwelling for Hashem by fulfilling mitzvahs and so on in this world. Nor der Tachtin darf bepoil nishtanet werden zu seiner direle isbarach. The whole point of the dire b'tachtayim is that the actual entity of the world below is changed, and that what it is transformed into being a dire for Hashem. Es muss sein die Pu'ule in dem Tachtin. The pull has to actually be, the effect has to be here, reaching into the place where the Tachton actually is. So for this you have to have the neshama descend here in actuality in this world, in the place of the Tachton. That's what the dir b'tachtainim is. The potential does not have at all the dir b'tachtainim. So therefore, according to Beishamai, the entire idea of the neshama coming to this world is just for the sake of Hashem, for the kavan of what Hashem wanted, dir b'tachtainim. By contrast, though, with Bishil's approach, when we come to assess something, the value of what something is, we look at what it is in actuality. According to Bishil, it comes out as the Yididis Neshama Lamata, the fact that the Neshama here descends below, there is something to see that the Neshama now is accomplishing and gaining that it did not have before. The actual aliyah of the neshama, which is the main point that we focus on to define whether this is valuable or not. So that actual aliyah is something that the neshama only gets here in this world. Weil Davke, durch die Yerida Lamata, bringt sie Arais, ihre Koiches Menakayach ala Pile. It's only when the Neshama descends here in this world that it does express the potential into the actual. Was like Beis Hillel is das der Iker von jeden Inyan. And according to Beis Hillel, this is the main thing that matters in every concept. It's saying regarding the Neshama, that even though, yes, it's a definite thing, and that the Neshama will fulfill this, and the Neshama has the potential, and no one will stop it, but it's only when it actually fulfills it that there's a new value that's here that comes from the actual. So therefore, Loit Beis Hillel, according to Beis Hillel's approach, as the Ikir Inyan from Yeridus and Neshama Lamata is L'chvaydi Yisbarach. Yes, it is true, as the Alter Rebbe says, even according to Beis Hillel, the main reason the Neshama comes into this world is for Hashem's glory. Ani Nevreisi L'shamash Eskaini. A Neshama is created to serve its master. Bichdei zu durchführen die Kavane von Dine B'tachteinim. To fulfill Hashem's purpose of creation, to create a dwelling here below in this world. Und das darf sein die Kavane von dem Modem Ba'avidasai. And that's the main focus of what a person's intention should be in serving Hashem. Von deswegen, but nevertheless, is ein Aveda Lamata an Inyan, was tut oif achidish euch in. It is Aveda here in this world, there is a certain accomplishment of something new that the Neshama did not have before, the B'payil, the actual Aliyah that the Neshama experiences, that's only here below. Therefore, what Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah is, according to Beis Hillel, that the Neshama itself also experiences a tremendous aliyah that's here in this world. That's the two approaches of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel as it relates to a Yid's Avodah in this world. Now, the Rebbe will now connect this to another point that Alter Rebbe discusses there in Likutei Torah regarding the purpose of a person's creation here in this world. The Chelek Anal zwischen Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. This distinction in the approach between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, Gitoichas, Bare, and Zeplukte, will give us also an understanding in their argument that the Gemara tells us that halalu, Beis Shammai yemrim, that Beis Shammai say, Noyach leila adam, shaloi nivra, yosem mishanivra. It's better for a person not to be created than to be created. But v'halalu Beis Hillel yemrim, Noyach leila adam, shanivra, yosem mishaloi nivra. No, it's actually better the fact that a person is created here in this world more than saying that he should not be created. And the Gemara concludes, Nimnu v'gomeru, they took account and they came to the conclusion, it's better that a person would have not been created than the fact that he's created now. But achshav shenivra, now that a person is existing and is created in this world, yifashpish b'maisav, let him look closely into his actions to see that he's doing everything right and fulfilling his purpose in this world. That's the argument in the Gemara. This is an argument which is difficult to understand. What's the point of this argument? Whether a person should have rather been created or not? What's behind this? In Likutei Torah dort is mavur the pshat in dem Maimon Chazal. So Likutei Torah that we quoted before explains what's the meaning here behind this statement of Chazal. So the first point here is, the argument here is not whether it was a good idea, beneficial for the person to be created or not. That's not the expression here. This is definitely something that everybody agrees to, that there's something that's good and beneficial for the neshama when it comes here into the world. The neshama does receive a tremendous elevation, an endless level of elevation through its avodah in this world. That's a fact. So now, what is the argument though? Now the pshat is, the meaning though of what Chazal, what Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are arguing about is, Noyach v'kal hoya shalei nivra. Noyach means it would just be easier and simpler if the neshama would not be created. While the tachlis hamuchovim b'briyasa is, because the purpose of a person serving Hashem in this world is, lo yaved legarmei o lekabel pras. He's not serving for his own sake, expecting any reward. Nor blois l'shamish eskaina. He's serving Hashem simply to serve his master, to serve his creator. And that approach to be completely focused just on serving Hashem is something which is very difficult. And it's much simpler and easier that one should not have to do this. So what Chazal are expressing, what Beis Shammai is expressing by this idea of Noach le'ladam shalei nivra is the approach of a person's Aveda, that there's nothing in it for himself. There's no gain in it. He's doing it completely for Hashem's sake. And serving Hashem on such a level is completely selfless, a very high level of Aveda. That's what Noach le'shalei nivra is expressing. Now, if this is the explanation of Beis Shammai's opinion, so the question becomes, so what's even the thought of Beis Hillel to say, as noyach v'kalei la'adam shenivra yosem mishalei nivra, that it's better, or not better, rather, it's easier and simpler for a person to be created and serve Hashem than to not be created and serve Hashem. Based on what the Alter Rebbe is explaining here, Beis Shammai is saying that to serve Hashem on this level, to be completely selfless, that's not noyach. That's not something which is easy or beneficial for the person at all. It's completely selfless, and it's sort of difficult when he drops himself, completely doing it for the sake of Hashem. What's Beis Hillel's argument to this? Is the beer in them? So the explanation for this here is as follows. Like Beis Shammai, as we explained before already, according to Beis Shammai's approach, is take milachatchila poshit. So it's actually right from the start, completely obvious, as the ganze inyan from Yeridas HaNeshama Lamata, the whole point of the Neshama descending here in this world, nit b'shvil aliyas HaNeshama, not for the elevation that the Neshama itself experiences, no blois l'chvay doyis barach. It's all for the honor of Hashem. Well, Kanal, as explained before at length, as tzalib aliyas HaNeshama, daf minute the Yerida b'poil. For whatever experience the neshama will have, its elevation in this world, you don't need it to actually be here in the world. It's sufficient the fact that the neshama has it all already in it, in potential. And therefore it's obvious as that it's easier in the avodah of a person in this world that he's not created. Which means, as far as what the person himself has in it, there's nothing in it for him. There's nothing new in it for him, for his neshama, when it descends into the world. It says, it's completely all for the honor of Hashem. That's what it means. For the person himself, there's nothing in it for him. It's just completely for the sake of Hashem. That's Beis Shammai's approach. However, according to Beis Hillel, is da an art zu sagen, there is room to say, as is noyach loy la'adam shenivra yosem mishalei nivra, that it's easier, there's something here for the person in his creation than he was before he descended here into the world. If the neshama was not created, did not descend here below, then it wouldn't have the connection to this great and ultimate of elevation that it comes to in this world. According to Beis Hillel's approach, that everything is defined by the actual, and only here in this world is where it has this actual level of elevation. And if this is the case, is there tainug davon, was the neshama hat von der aliyah asach gresser wie the nitzar haneshama biridas lamata, that is. The pleasure that the neshama has here in this world, and this great level of elevation that it experiences, is much greater than any pain or suffering or challenges that the neshama has here being in this world. That it's easier for the neshama itself, that it experiences for itself something in being created in this world. Feelendik, the neshama feels and knows, as das bringen an aliyah nefla, tainug otzum. This brings the neshama a wondrous and great elevation, a very intense pleasure, lamreis dem itztigen tzar, although right now experiences pain and suffering in the world. Vilay nevra, then not descending and not being here in this world, unithaben kein shayches zu der aliyah gedoyle v'nefla, which then it does not have any connection and can't experience this great level of revelation. So that's the approach of Beis Hillel. While the neshama is here in the world to fulfill the purpose of Hashem, that's the main focus of the neshama of why it's here in this world, but nevertheless, there is something in the nivra for the neshama himself that it's experiencing a great aliyah being here in this world that comes about only through it actually being here. So now what's the conclusion of the Gemara? Nimnu v'gamru, they took account and they concluded that most said that that it's better, or it's easier, the fact that a person is not created than the fact that he is created. And what this means is, and this is according to all opinions, as the neshama yes, the fact is, when the neshama comes into this world, according to the Beis Hillel, it's only here when it's papayil in the world that it reaches to this great and unbelievable level of revelation. However, When Chazal focused to analyze what's the right approach to have and what you focus on, they concluded and said that this is not the focus. The aliyah that the person comes to is not what he's focusing on. The focus of the person that does his avodah should be not with any intention, any expectation to receive anything for himself, any kind of reward. Nor blois, just completely and totally, l'shamish, as kainai, to serve his master. Legamri, nitrachten wegen sich und seine aliyahs, not to think of oneself, not to think of any levels that he's going higher and greater and so on. Therefore the Gemara concludes, is noyach v'kaloi shaloi nivra yoser mishenivra. It's just simpler, the fact that a person is not created, meaning he's not focused on himself at all, but he's here just for the Eibishter's sake. But the fact that he's created and the aliyah that he has is not at all the thing that the person focuses on. That's the pshat in this machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding the focus of a person's creation here in this world. So now based on all of this, we understand here the two approaches of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, whether you look at the Bekoyach or the Bepoil, which is the basis of the machlokes in the Mishnah of Chales Devash, and as that applies regarding a person's Aveda here in this world, this gives us now a deeper understanding of the last Mishnah of Oster Kadosh Baruch Hu Lahanchel. Und das ist eigentlich der Scheiches von der Mishnah von Chales Devash zu der Mishnah Ha'achreina Oster Kadosh Baruch Hu Lahanchel. This is now the connection of the Mishnah, the machlokes regarding the Chales Devash, to the very last Mishnah that discusses the Lahanchel, the inheritance that the tzaddikim receive. Frie bringt the Mishnah Pluktas Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel Tzi as Lina Basa B'Koyach or as Lina Basa B'Poil. First, the Mishnah quotes the machlokes that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel have, whether you define something by its potential state or its actual state. Was lefize volt gewen an Arzt zu sagen. And now, based on this, there would be room to say, as Ladas Beis Hillel is the aliyas, schar ha'adam, the ikir atam, oder akalponim atam shove, fon zan yirida lamata. You may come to now say that according to Beis Hillel, the aliyah, the reward that a person himself experiences in his neshama here below, is the main reason, or at least an equal reason, for why he's here in this world. Since according to Beis Hillel, we follow the actual Bepoil, it's only here when the neshama comes into the world that it could experience its own great aliyah. Is the Mishnah Mamshech, so now the Mishnah continues and explains, bedugmas zu ninu v'gamru anal, similar to the Gemara, where it brings the argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding noyach shalei nivra or nivra, and then it concludes and says nimnu v'gamru, that they came and said a conclusion according to all opinions, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So here as well, the Mishnah continues and clarifies according to both opinions. That Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, that Hashem will give an inheritance to all the ones that love Him, and this will be an inheritance on the level of Yesh, which means that Lakula Alma, for Mishnah Akidemis, all of the opinions in the previous Mishnah, Oich Ladas Beis Hillel, including also Beis Hillel's opinion, is the Matare v'Tachlis ha'Aveda shal ha'Neshama lamata. The purpose of the Aveda of the Neshama here in this world is Nit Ir Schar V'Aliyah. It's not the reward and whatever level it comes to through its being here in this world. It's Aveda in this world. Nor wie the dvash von dveirim l'sagel lebaleha. But rather like the honey that the bees produce, which is being produced for the one that it's doing it for, not for itself. So durchführen etzaynai kavanasa shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to simply fulfill the will and the intention of Hashem in creation. Was direkt zu heißen dem, was the neshama wert ein zach kavayachol mit dem yesh hamuchlet hametzias atmidis. And this is where the neshama becomes completely one with the true existence and the constant existence of Hashem. That is, according to everybody's opinion, the point and the focus of the neshama here in this world. That's what the Mishnah is concluding, even according to Beis Hillel. But yet, at the same time, it doesn't mean that there won't be any reward or elevation that the neshama itself will experience. That will be, according to all opinions. And this is here, we see this by the fact that Rabbi Shua ben Levi quotes also the continuation of the pasuk. After the pasuk says the words lahanchel oyev veyesh, so he concludes and brings the pasuk vayisresehem amale, and their storehouses or their treasuries I will fill. Why is he quoting the end of the pasuk? was das geht auf die Oizres shel tzadikim b'olam hazeh. Oizres say hem is pointing to their treasuries, what they will gain in this. Since Hashem does not withhold reward of any creation that serves him. The neshama does receive its reward as a nivra in the avodah that it does. That's the Oster Mamale. So the first part of the pasuk is talking about the ultimate purpose and level of the neshama's avodah, not focusing on itself at all, completely selfless, just being one with the Yeshua Amiti, with Hashem himself. But nevertheless, the neshama will also receive a reward as a created being for what it does, and that's in the second part of the pasuk. However, that inyan from Mamale, this point about the fact that Hashem fills the treasuries of the tzaddik himself as a created being in this world, bereknit Rabbi Shua ben Levi in sein Etzem HaMaimer. He doesn't quote this in the statement that he himself says. He doesn't say, Osid HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lahanchel Chulu, Ulamalo Yitzrisein, that Hashem will bring the inheritance and will fill their treasuries. That's not part of the statement. Now, Blois B'derech Agav is just brought in the pasuk that he quotes as a side point, Brengedik dem pasuk Lahanchel Veyesh, when he quotes this pasuk of Lahanchel Veyesh. And the reason is, weil in sein Etzemaime retter wegen der Iker Ushleimus de Losid. In the statement of Rabbi Shua ben Levi itself, he's speaking about the ultimate purpose of where a Yid comes to in the future when Mashiach comes. And that is to be completely one with Hashem, which is accomplished through a totally selfless Aveda. Nor kedei zu andeiten euch auf den Schar, kipshutoi, but also in order to hint also to the simple, basic concept of schar that the neshama receives in this world as a created being, was kommt b'derech tafel, which is here totally as a secondary thing. And it has absolutely no significance in relation to the level where the neshama is one with the true existence of Hashem himself. He also quotes the conclusion of the pasuk where it says, "Vayisreseihem, their treasuries I will fill," referring to the simple schar that a tzaddik gets in his avodah in this world. That's the meaning of this Mishnah in connection to what it says in the previous Mishnah, where it brings the machlokes of Beishamai and Beisilo. Another point we can say here regarding what the Mishnah is saying when it says Lahanchel Oye Veyesh, continuing from the opinions of Beishamai and Beisil in the previous Mishnah. It says, Yedua, it's well known what it says, as la'asid, lavai, vedzayin halacha ki b'shamai. That when Mashiach comes, then, unlike today, where everything, the halacha is like Fishel, then the halacha will be like b'shamai. Was eine von den Biyunim, was meken in dem Sagen, al pi anal is, one of the explanations for this, why when Mashiach comes, the halacha will be like b'shamai. So based on what we learned before, we can explain as follows. Bisman hazeh, today, when the Adam felt sein Metzias, when a person still senses and experiences himself as an entity, is halacha ki Beisilo. So here we define everything according to Beisilo's approach. Men sagt dem Adam an sein avodah tut euch auf an aliyah in him. And as explained before, Beisilo's approach is that yes, the main avodah of why a person is here in this world is for Hashem's sake, but there's also a great aliyah that the person himself experiences, because there is that aspect of our approach, the way we sense ourselves in our existence today. When there'll be absolute revelation of godliness from above, and Yidden become completely one with the true existence, with the essence of existence of Hashem, so then in that time period, the existence of a person as an entity will not at all have any significance. Und der ganze Auftu wird bestehen, bloß in der Hanchel Oyave Yesh. And then the only thing that will matter is the inheritance with the Yesh, with Hashem himself, the fact that a Yid is one with Hashem. So therefore, Rabbi Shua ben Levi Gufa, Rabbi Shua ben Levi in his own statement, that's focusing about what happens when Mashiach comes. And in them Gufa and Siyam Mishnayis, and here he's saying this as a conclusion and as the closing of all the Mishnayis. When a person is coming at the conclusion, when he's done his entire Aveda b'shleimus, b'matzav, that is the shleimus atzadik, and on the level, on the condition of the ultimate Aveda of atzadik. Sagt nor, so all he says in the statement is, Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahanchil l'chol tzadik v'tzadik cholo. That when Mashiach comes, the only thing that will be relevant, the only thing that we'll experience is the nachla, the inheritance, the complete oneness with Hashem, with no trace of self at all. That's a statement. Nor, however, Asevi, the limud HaMishnah is fart by Elam Hazeh, even though the point of the statement is being said about the future and at the conclusion and the closing of the Mishnah, but nevertheless, we are learning and studying this Mishnah now, today, in Elam Hazeh, when a person is still in a condition where he is a Metzias. So therefore he quotes, not as his own statement, but what it says in the Pasuk, that Hashem will fill their treasury. As Reibishter vet euch memale sein the Eitzris shel tzadikim. That Hashem will fill the treasury of the entity of the tzadikim the way they see themselves and the way their avodah is here today in Elam Hazeh before we come to the ultimate shleimus la'ased lavai.